Today we are going to discuss animal life cycles. In what ways do organisms grow and develop over their lifetime, and how can different developmental stages be evolutionarily advantageous? Our first claim is that different kinds of animals have different kinds of life cycles. The first animal we'll discuss is the grasshopper. It has 3 stages that include the egg, nymph, and adult. For the grasshopper, the life cycle begins with the eggs that are placed in the ground. The eggs hatch into nymphs that look like smaller versions of their adult form, but they do not yet have wings. While in the nymph stage, the grasshopper has instar stages in which it molts, or sheds its skin, and then grows a bit more. There are typically 6 instar stages, with the 6th and final stage being the adult stage. In the final stage, the grasshopper has wings. This life cycle typically happens with the eggs hatching in the spring and reaching full adult size during the summer. The next animal we'll discuss is the salmon. It has 6 stages that include eggs, alvin, fry, smolts, adult, and spawners. The salmon's life cycle starts as eggs that are laid in shallow riverbed streams. These eggs hatch into alvins. The alvins are small and yellow and still have a yolk sac attached to them. Once the sac is gone, they turn a silver color and are called fry. The fry are now ready to go search for their own food. Once the fry start heading towards the sea, they become a smolt through a smelting process. During this process, they are changing so that they can survive in salt water. Once they reach the ocean, they enter the adult stage. Towards the end of the salmon's life, they journey back to the exact same riverbed stream where they were born in. The difficult journey back turns them red. This stage is referred to as the spawner stage. Once they arrive at the riverbed, they lay eggs and die shortly afterwards. As you can see, the life cycles of these 2 animals are different in several ways. First, they have a different number of stages they go through. The grasshopper has 3 stages, egg, nymph, and adult, and the salmon has 6 stages, egg, alvin, fry, smolt, adult, and spawner. Each stage also looks different. The nymph stage of the grasshopper looks like a smaller version of the adult form, but the salmon's first stage, alvin, does not closely resemble the adult form. The salmon's life cycle is also different from the grasshopper because it has an extra stage after it becomes an adult called spawner. The amount of time for each life cycle is also different. The grasshopper only takes a few months to reach the final stage, whereas the salmon takes many years to get to their final life cycle stage. My second claim is that each life cycle stage has a purpose that gives the animal an advantage. The first animal I will discuss here is the frog. The frog has 3 stages in its life cycle that include the egg, the tadpole, and the adult. First, the adult frogs lay eggs in the water. These eggs hatch into tadpoles. The tadpole goes through metamorphosis to the adult stage. The tadpole is also able to survive in water. This protects it from predators as it goes through metamorphosis. During metamorphosis, many things happen, the most notable being the loss of the tail and the growth of the limbs. The back limbs are the first to appear. Towards the end of the stage, the front legs appear and the tail shrinks. The metamorphosis process typically takes 2 to 3 months to fully complete. Within the frog species, some stages may happen at different times based on the needs of the animal set by the environment. The final adult stage now has all of the parts necessary for it to be able to survive on land. The purpose of the frog having a life cycle stage as a tadpole is so that it can get food. A tadpole lives in a different habitat that is temporary. This creates less competition for food. The adult stage allows for the frog to travel. This creates opportunities to obtain food, find new places to live, and to disperse the species. The dispersal of species allows the next generation to survive because they will not overcrowd and compete for food. The next animal I will discuss is the mealworm. Its life cycle consists of 4 stages: the egg, the larva, the pupa, and the adult darkling beetle. The mealworm is the larva stage of the darkling beetle. The darkling beetle first lays eggs, which then hatch into larvae. The larva digs below ground. While underground, the mealworm sheds its exoskeleton. This process is known as molting. After a few weeks, the mealworms return to the surface. Then their exoskeleton hardens and they begin the pupa stage. Their hard shell protects it as it goes through metamorphosis. The final stage is the adult darkling beetle. In this stage, they have a hard shell to protect them, and they are able to move very quickly, too. This helps them to protect themselves. The time it takes for the entire mealworm life cycle to complete depends on the temperature, which typically depends on the location and time of year. When the mealworm goes through metamorphosis, it obtains wings. This gives the animal an advantage because it can now travel. This allows the beetle to survive because it does not have to stay in one place to live, therefore providing new opportunities. It can travel to get food and find new places to live if necessary. Another purpose for it to travel is to allow it to be able to disperse the species. The dispersal of species assures the survival of a new generation by not overcrowding one habitat. Next, I will discuss children's misconceptions about life cycles. Death is not part of the life cycle. Children often think that the animal's life cycle is over once they reach the adult stage. The life cycle for that particular animal is not actually complete until the animal dies. The life cycle includes the entire life of the animal. The information I provided about the salmons can help to show how this is not correct, because there is another stage after they reach the adult stage and before they die called the spawner. The life cycle itself continues to go on after that animal dies because it lays new eggs. This is shown through the pictures I provide. The source of this idea is most likely derived from not mentioning it when teaching about life cycles to children. Most of the times they are only shown pictures with an arrow in a cycle that does not include death. Eggs are non-living things. Children sometimes believe that eggs are non-living things. I show how this is wrong by including them as a stage in the life cycle and by saying how the animal hatches from the egg. This shows that the developing animal is inside the egg. The source of this idea can derive from many things. Some of the reasons children think an egg is not alive is because it does not move or breathe. The life cycle stages do not happen continuously. Children often believe that the animal simply changes to the next stage instead of changing gradually over time. In many of my examples, I explain how each animal changes little by little. For example, I say that in the tadpole stage, they first have no limbs. Then hind limbs grow, followed by the front limbs, and finally the tail recedes. At this point, they are then considered an adult frog. A source of this idea may be due to the children being shown pictures of life cycle stages without explaining that they develop gradually. Not all organisms have a life cycle. Children do not always recognize that animals have a life cycle. They often only know the life cycles that they learned about. I try to steer away from this misconception by giving several examples of different animals and their life cycles, and by explaining that different kinds of animals have different kinds of life cycles. This misconception happens because students are often only taught the life cycles of certain animals, and they do not connect that other organisms that they have not yet learned about also have life cycles. Before beginning this research, I knew that animals had life cycles and that they were different, but I do not know the precise ways that they were different, the details about the different life cycles, or the benefits of each life cycle stage. I did not even consider that different animals of the same species might vary in the way they change or the amounts of time necessary to change to each stage. I also thought that the life cycle was only the birth to adulthood. After completing the research, I now know the different life cycles of the grasshopper, the salmon, the frog, and the mealworm. I also realized that each stage is beneficial to the animal in some way, mainly protection and survival. I know that some animals of the same species may take different amounts of time to complete their life cycles too. This is usually dependent on the environmental conditions. I also learned that the life cycles include the time up to death. I always thought that the shift between each stage was the life cycle. The research for this project provided me with a lot of new and detailed information that will help me in explaining my topic when teaching.